My name is Olivia Reynolds, and I live in New York City. I'm a relationship coach, a woman who has spent over 2 decades helping others find love, keep love, and recover from heartbreak. On the outside, I was the expert, polished, confident, and always in control. I had built a career teaching people how to cultivate the perfect relationship, but behind closed doors, my own love life was a mess. 2 divorces, countless failed relationships, and a heart weighed down by loneliness. I spent years telling others how to find love, but deep down, I had started to wonder if I had ever truly experienced it myself. Valentine's Day was my biggest season, my brand's most profitable moment of the year. Love was business, and business was booming. But this year, something felt different. Something felt off. I should have been celebrating another successful seminar, another full roster of eager clients paying for my advice. Instead, I felt empty. I felt exhausted from preaching about something that, deep down, I no longer believed in. And then everything changed. That evening, as I was preparing for an exclusive Valentine's event for my highest-paying clients, I felt an overwhelming dizziness, a sharp, unbearable pain spread across my chest, and in an instant, I collapsed. The world around me faded. I was dying. The last thing I remembered was the sound of muffled voices calling my name, the distant echo of paramedics rushing to my aid. Then, nothing. But death wasn't the end. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in a hospital. I wasn't anywhere I recognized. I was standing in a place where time and space felt different, more real than anything I had ever known. And then I saw him, Jesus. I had spoken about love my entire life, but standing before him, I realized I had never truly known it. His presence was overwhelming, powerful, yet gentle. His eyes met mine, and in that moment, it was as if he could see everything, every thought, every doubt, every tear I had shed in secret. I had spent my life believing I was an expert on love, yet one look from him shattered every illusion I had ever held. I thought maybe he would comfort me, tell me everything would be okay. Instead, he showed me something that changed everything. He revealed the truth about love, how the world had twisted it into something shallow, something fleeting, something selfish. And then he showed me how I had spent my life chasing a lie.
Before we dive into this incredible journey, I want to encourage you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Let's create a community where we can uplift and support each other on this journey of life. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.
I stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. The presence before me was unlike anything I had ever felt, overpowering yet tender, piercing yet warm. Jesus stood there, his gaze unwavering, seeing through every mask I had ever worn, every lie I had ever told myself. I tried to speak, but my throat closed up. What could I say? That I was sorry, that I didn't know, that I had built an entire life around something I didn't truly understand? But before I could form the words, he raised his hand, and in an instant, the world around me shifted. I was no longer standing in the undefined vastness of this otherworldly realm. Instead, I found myself transported to a place both familiar and foreign. It was New York City, but not as I had ever seen it before. The streets were bustling with people, yet there was something surreal about them. They moved in a rhythmic, almost mechanical way, laughing, embracing, exchanging gifts. Everywhere I looked, couples held hands, kissed under glowing streetlights, exchanged roses with dreamy-eyed devotion. Valentine's Day. The city was alive with its celebration, but something about it felt hollow. The smiles seemed forced, the laughter exaggerated. I turned to Jesus, confusion weighing down on me. "This is love?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "This is what the world has made it," he responded. His tone was gentle, but there was a depth of sorrow in his eyes. "Watch." As he spoke, my vision sharpened, and I began to see beyond the surface. Behind the perfectly curated dates, I saw the hidden loneliness beneath the grand gestures. I saw a woman forcing a smile as she held her boyfriend's hand, though her heart was sinking because she knew he was unfaithful. I saw a man laughing over dinner, desperate to prove to himself that he was happy, that the woman across from him was the one, even though he didn't love her. And then, more darkness crept in. I saw people crying behind closed doors, forgotten and unseen, drowning in their own unfulfilled longing. I saw a man scrolling endlessly through dating apps, searching, swiping, unable to rest because the next person could be better. I saw a married woman sitting at home, waiting for a love that never truly arrived, her heart aching under the weight of unmet expectations. It was everywhere. The craving, the hunger, the insatiable need for love that never seemed to satisfy. My stomach twisted. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, my voice trembling. Jesus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he lifted his hand, and the scene changed once more. This time, I found myself in a massive hall, the kind where I used to hold my seminars. The crowd was filled with eager faces, desperate for answers. And then I saw her, myself. I was standing at the front of the room, microphone in hand, speaking with all the confidence and authority that had once come so naturally. I was telling them how to manifest love, how to become irresistible, how to secure a commitment. The audience clung to my every word, their eyes wide with hope. But something was wrong. As I watched myself speak, I saw something lurking in the shadows of the room, dark figures barely visible, shifting and slithering just beneath the surface of reality. They whispered into the ears of the audience, feeding their fears, their insecurities, their obsession with finding someone, anyone, to fill the emptiness. My blood ran cold. Jesus turned to me. "Do you see?" he asked. I nodded, my throat tight. I thought I was helping people." "You believed you were," he said. "But what were you truly giving them?" I looked at my past self, so full of certainty. I had built an empire on the idea that love was something to be pursued, attained, and perfected like a formula. But now, standing here, watching it all unfold from the outside, I saw what I had never seen before. It wasn't love I had been selling. It was desperation. It was a cleverly packaged illusion, a promise that if people just did the right things, said the right words, played the game correctly, then love would reward them. But love had never been a game. And real love, the kind that endured, the kind that healed, the kind that was meant to be, had nothing to do with tactics and strategies. Tears welled in my eyes. "I didn't know," I whispered. Jesus' gaze was steady. "Many do not." A deep aching sorrow settled over me. I had spent years feeding the very thing that was destroying people. I had given them hope, yes, but a hollow, fleeting hope. I had taught them how to chase love, but not how to receive it, not how to truly give it, and certainly not how to recognize the difference between what the world called love and what love actually was. The weight of it all crushed me. "What have I done?" I choked out. Jesus placed a hand on my shoulder. "This is not the end, Olivia." The scene faded, and I found myself standing once more in that timeless realm beside him. My heart still pounded from what I had seen. "You still do not understand fully," he continued. "There is something more you must see." I swallowed hard, fear curling around the edges of my soul. If what I had just witnessed was only the beginning, what else was left to be revealed? A cold shiver ran down my spine. What was coming next? Jesus' words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. There is something more you must see. My pulse quickened, my heart heavy with dread. The weight of what I had just witnessed was unbearable enough, the deception of love, the empty pursuits, the desperate hunger for something that never seemed to satisfy. And yet, I knew he was right. There was more. The space around us shifted once again, and suddenly, I was no longer in the endless, divine realm. I was standing in a different place, a courtroom. The air was thick with tension, the walls tall and unyielding, stretching far beyond my sight. It wasn't like any courtroom I had ever seen on Earth. There was no jury, no rows of spectators, just a vast, ominous hall where every sound echoed as if recorded in eternity. My breath caught in my throat as I realized where I was. I was in the courts of heaven. At the front of the courtroom, a great throne stood, though I couldn't make out the full figure seated upon it. There was a presence, a holy, consuming power that both terrified and drew me in. And in front of this throne stood two figures. One was radiant, a being of light, standing with authority and unmatched purity. Jesus. The other figure was a darkness I had never encountered before. Twisted and hideous, yet unnervingly composed. It had no solid form, yet its presence pressed against my soul like chains wrapping around me. Its voice was smooth, calculated, yet laced with venom. "She has spent her life spreading lies," the dark figure sneered, pointing directly at me. "She has misled thousands, no, millions. She has convinced them that love is a game, that relationships can be controlled, that they must endlessly chase something that was never meant to be hunted. She has built a kingdom upon illusion and selfish desire." The words sent a sharp pain through my chest. It was true. I had. The being continued, stepping closer to the throne. "She has idolized romance over truth, placed human affection above divine love. She has profited from the desperation of others, convincing them that they are incomplete without another person. She has reinforced the enemy's plan, the lie that love must be earned, fought for, and possessed." Tears streamed down my face. I couldn't deny any of it. I had built my entire career on these ideas. I had sold the world a version of love that wasn't real. By her own words, the being continued, voice cold and triumphant, "She is guilty." Silence filled the courtroom. It was suffocating. I felt exposed, utterly condemned. I turned to Jesus, my only hope, desperate for him to defend me, to say something in my favor. But he didn't. He simply looked at me, not with anger, not with disappointment, but with something even deeper, grief. And that broke me more than anything else. I fell to my knees, sobbing. "I didn't know," I choked out. I thought I was helping people. I thought I was giving them what they wanted." Jesus knelt beside me, lifting my chin with the gentlest touch. "And what did they truly need, Olivia?" I swallowed, my throat dry and raw. "They needed something real," I whispered. "They needed something deeper than attraction, deeper than validation. They needed love that wasn't about them, love that wasn't about taking, but about giving." His gaze softened, but he remained solemn. "And did you give them that?" A fresh wave of tears hit me. I shook my head. "No." The courtroom darkened, as if the weight of my confession carried consequences beyond what I could see. The shadows from the dark being crept forward, as though tightening their grip around me. "She is guilty," the being repeated, the words final, like a gavel striking judgment. "And the wages of sin." "Are paid," Jesus interrupted. The entire courtroom trembled at the sound of his voice. It wasn't raised, yet it carried an authority that shook everything. The shadows recoiled, shrinking away as Jesus rose to his feet. He turned to the throne, addressing the divine presence before it. "I have paid for her sins," he declared, "not just hers, but for all who have been deceived by this lie." A light burst forth, flooding the courtroom, washing over me like fire and water at the same time. It burned, but it cleansed. I gasped as the weight that had been crushing me lifted, as the suffocating shame was stripped away. The dark figure let out a low hiss, stepping back into the shadows. "Then let her see," it spat. "Let her see what love truly is." In an instant, the courtroom vanished, and I found myself standing somewhere new. A hill I had seen before in paintings, in stories, but never with my own eyes. Calvary. The sky above was dark, trembling with fury, yet the ground below was soaked in something red. Blood. I turned, and my stomach twisted in horror. Jesus was there, but not the radiant Jesus who had stood beside me, not the Jesus of light and power. This Jesus was bruised, broken, barely breathing. His body hung from a cross, pierced and torn, yet his eyes still carried love. My knees buckled and I collapsed before him. "No," I sobbed. "No, I can't see this. I don't deserve to see this." Yet I couldn't look away. This was love. Not roses, not grand gestures, not fleeting passion or whispered promises. Love was sacrifice. Love was pain. Love was giving everything for someone who could never repay it. For me? A sob tore through my chest. "I'm sorry," I wept. "I never understood. I never knew." The world around me began to fade, the vision slipping away, but the last thing I saw before the darkness took over was his face, his broken, suffering face, looking at me with nothing but love. Then, silence, and just before I was pulled back into my body, I heard his voice, as soft as a whisper, yet as powerful as a storm. "Now, Olivia, go and tell them the truth." A sharp gasp tore through my chest as I jolted awake. The blinding white lights of the hospital room flooded my vision, the rhythmic beeping of machines filling my ears. My body ached, my head was pounding, and every breath felt like I was inhaling fire, but none of that mattered. I was alive. Tears slipped from my eyes as I turned my head, my mind still reeling from everything I had seen, everything I had felt. The courtroom, the hill, the cross. Love. Real love. It wasn't what I had spent years selling. It wasn't desire, attraction, or validation. It was sacrifice. It was selflessness. It was Jesus. A nurse rushed in, calling for the doctor. Moments later, my hospital room filled with people, medical staff, voices speaking over one another. But I barely heard them. My mind was still in that place, in the presence of him, in the presence of the truth that had shattered everything I once believed. A doctor leaned over me. "Ms. Reynolds, can you hear me?" I nodded weakly. "You suffered a heart attack," he said. "You were clinically dead for nearly 3 minutes. We weren't sure you were going to make it." 3 minutes. That's all it had been in their world. But in the place I had been, it felt like an eternity. I had died, but I had been brought back for a reason. The days that followed were filled with recovery, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I barely spoke to anyone, retreating into the silence, replaying the vision over and over. I knew I couldn't go back to my old life. I couldn't go back to teaching people how to chase a love that didn't exist. I had spent my life building an empire on a lie, and now I had no choice but to tear it down. The first thing I did when I was discharged was cancel my upcoming events. My assistant was stunned. My clients confused. My inbox flooded with messages from people demanding to know why I had abandoned my work. I didn't have the words yet. How could I explain that everything I had spent my life believing had been dismantled in an instant? I spent weeks in prayer, asking for guidance, asking what now? The answer always came back to the same thing: tell them the truth. So I did. The first time I spoke publicly about my experience, I lost everything. My clients dropped me. My business collapsed overnight. People called me insane, accused me of ruining my own reputation. But none of it mattered. Because for the first time in my life, I knew what love was. And no matter what it cost me, I was going to spend the rest of my life telling the world the truth.